Now I want to go in a bit tighter now. So in order not to smudge this, I'm going to put a little bit of paper. I'm now turning this much more onto the toes to pick in some of these darks. So a bit of dark there and into that, trying to keep it interesting, and dark down into the V shape there. Crisscrossing out, dark behind this one. And this trailing bit is going to be quite a rich dark. Bit of shadow underneath there, and start working up now. There's a shadow recess there, so I can put that in with my crisscross strokes and relate it to another one up here where we have that lighter branch. And there could be another light branch there actually. Sometimes when the texture of the paper gives you ideas, it's very effective to just use them and go either side of these odd little shapes that appear. It'll make it more natural. Crisscrossing in there, another little shape in there, a bit more dark down there, and up to the top. And as I sit back and look at it, I'm getting quite a nice feeling of travelling through this tree shape. A little bit of tone there. Some of my strokes are just grazing strokes. I might want a bit that's going to disappear into the background, so I'll just graze that in as a flat tone, and then tucking in behind some light areas will bring these highlighted foliage masses forward. And up into this dark, this side, to get that little bit of silhouette shape along that darker edge. Now I want to go on my toes for a bit of texture down here. And some uneven marks. Perhaps a little bit of shadow coming across there. And the shadow cast across the uneven ground. A little bit of on-off pressure there, just to add interest to that light edge. Now I'm doing a few pull-down strokes to give the foliage there. And a bit of extra flat toning to go behind this light mass. Now I'm thinking a bit more about the tree behind by cutting in and coming away, cutting in and crisscrossing away. So it's very important to consider this silhouette edge, and actually as the tree's behind and it's a shadow side, I could do flat grazing there to knock that back, and that really does bring that light one forward. Crisscross away again. Some tiny little pull down strokes in some of these light areas, just enough to continue with the shape so that we can still see the shape of the masses. So we're going to have dark under here and shadow side here. On my toes for the lighter side. And taking out the area here that's going to be dark. And and looking at some of the little recesses now on the second tree. And I'm going to take the shadow across the path a bit. Got a little bit of light hitting this area here. You could have a little bush or something growing behind here which would help bring that light side forward, and if I go on my toes I can take the bush up into the background a bit, which will give me a nice little negative there, and up into another bush over here, and that'll really bring forward that light side of the tree. I'm going to sit back and look at the shapes and see where I can put in some darker ones, and probably in here. And if I crisscross up here, it's actually throwing that area of the tree right into the foreground as it comes towards us, and that can splay out at the edge over there. And it looks as if there could be a branch here to support that area. That again will need dark underneath. And a little bit more mid-tone just above it. And another dark up here, giving the same sort of feel as if that area is coming towards us again. And you just 1 or 2 strokes at the top. A little bit of bank going out there. If you do tick and flick strokes for something that's at a distance like this, you must be careful to keep them very small. We're only suggesting 1 or 2 grasses perhaps coming up, but for the distance we see that tree, they should be very tiny strokes. You don't want large ones there. I'm going to bring in a little bit more contrast underneath this side, and working upwards. My application really is a zigzag on the whole, pushing out with a zigzag and then up on your toes if you want the delicate edges. Now and again you sit back and you just see whether you've got interest running through the area with all these interlocking branches and things, where you can see them into the negatives. A bit of dark in there will bring that one forward a bit more. And that also allows you a chance to reduce the width of some of them if you feel they're a bit wide for so high up in the tree. Now we have got a lost line at the top. Up here, if the light area of foliage was roughly the same sort of tone as the sky in that area, there's no need to put a line or anything along the edge. We can still imagine that as a tree being in front. What you could do is perhaps just increase this tone a bit from the tree behind to just make it more apparent that that is still this light tree in front of the other one. It's a good idea not to have edges all around them, because in nature we don't see that. There are certain areas that do disappear into others when they're the same tone. I'm just coming to the end now and trying to assess where a little bit of extra dark may help something. A little bit of extra dark there would bring that light bank forward and increase the shadow here as it comes down, and perhaps put a bit of dark in there and a bank coming down here. And at the base of the bank some little marks just to define the edge of it, and grazing across to give that little shadow area, and looking for some darks perhaps in here, and starting to bring this area forward. We can have things like rocks or little bushes, other things that could be there. Probably a few shadow sides on some stones and rocks could be quite nice in this one. And it can also take us away from a straight line at the base of our sketch and bring us down and give a more interesting overall shape to the composition. So I think I will introduce a few more rock shapes down here, So it's a case of going shadow side of stone and then pushing up away from the light side into the shadow side of another stone. It's just so that you've got a few uneven ones on the ground. And then taking this shadow out a bit more, because these trees are quite large expanses and they are going to put quite a bit of shadow on the ground. Rocks that are a little bit beyond here needn't be too detailed. What you can do is just a few shapes, shadow shapes, just rising up. And that'll just take us back into the picture. And I do feel that perhaps a little bit of twisting and some few delicate stems just coming up here. It could be anything growing that's delicate. And that would just stop the eye from rushing off the paper there and add a little bit of interest and a contrast of texture again, because we've got the finer lines of these. But we do need to be right on the toes to get them quite slim. But try not to get them too even. Some will be shorter than others, some can be massed, some sparse and just standing on their own. But that just supports that side a little bit more. A few little increases in tone, because we want the stronger contrasts to be near the foreground. So I can just put a bit more pressure on the pencil to get some rich contrast in some of these, and one or two tinier ones perhaps, just as little undulations in the ground, just to give us that rocky area. To break up an area that's a little bit empty, you could just introduce something that actually goes across. So it goes across this area, across the background and up into the sky beyond. And that also can introduce another shadow, a cast shadow that comes along and down the bank, again to break up that area. So a little bush like that can sometimes be helpful, and then introducing a little bit more of the shadow side of that bank. And I'm toning directionally here. If the bank is shallower here, I'll be toning like that. If the bank is deeper, I'm going to have my tone more vertical. And that gives that effect of us feeling we could walk down these different surfaces at different angles. So that's about finished for my little sketch, and I hope that's helped you with your relationships of trees and putting a background behind them. I would like to just talk you through the strokes that I've applied here so that you can understand how you can use them in your own representations. First of all, of course, I considered the silhouette as I worked, and I started by doing flat tonal areas. They look interesting and textured, and that's because of the soft pencil I'm using and the surface texture of the paper. So I worked out into a silhouette on the shadow side, and that helped me to start feel my way through and pick out areas that I wanted to be the tonal shadow recess areas. And for those I do crisscross stroke application, because that'll give me interesting edges around them. As I crisscross, and it's a gentle pressure on the paper, I'm introducing little shapes without realizing it, and that's how I bring out these little twigs and branches. And as I come down to the base of the tree, I'm thinking of where the light doesn't reach and where I can put the dark underneath the canopy, and its relationship with any supporting trunk and branches. In my mind, I'm trying to see how it's going to be, and when I'm gently laying it out, I start then putting a dark behind, because it's the dark behind that's going to define the final side to that tree. And then this tree, we don't want it to be just sitting there supporting it and doing nothing else. We want to have some character in that tree also. So I try to just do it at a slight angle, different lengths of trunk, and a relationship with the ground that's going to lead me back to my first one, because at this stage I'm considering my negative, the shape between. And then, of course, it's the different levels of the ground, because they also are going to help to take us into the composition. Up to and away for shadow sides of stones, and introducing something if there's a blank area and you think you could get a better shape by putting something growing through and up there. And these strokes were the pushing upwards and the uneven application to give interest on tiny twigs. I hope it's helped for me going through like that, and I hope you can try them all yourself and see if you can get a little study that is similar to this, and then go on to your own ideas.
now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The extended DVD of today's workshop is now available from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.